This event could not have been possible without the generous help of the following platinum partners: PropertyRadar and Sean O'Toole, HousingWire, the Apartment Owners Association, the San Diego Creative Real Estate Investors Association and President Bill Tan, Investors Workshops and Sean Watkins, Angel Bronzegeest and Sarah Benora, investCLUB for Women and Iris Veneration and Bobby Alexander, San Jose Real Estate Investors Association and Geraldine Barry, MVT Productions, RODA Construction, Wilson Investment Properties, and White House Catering. For event video and information, visit isurvivedrealestate.com. The Norris Group would like to thank its gold sponsors for supporting I Survived Real Estate: Adrenaline Athletics, Claudia Buys Houses, Coldwell Banker Town & Country, Elite Auctions, Phoebe, for investors by investors, Home Vestors, In a Day Development, Inland Empire Investors Forum, Inland Valley Association of Realtors, Investor Experts, Inc., John Merrill Investments, Inc., Keystone CPA, Las Brisas Escrow, Lavis Associates, Northern California Real Estate Investors Association, Northern San Diego Real Estate Investors Association, Orange County Real Estate Investors Association, Orange County Investment Club Phoebe, Personal Real Estate Magazine, Pilot Limo, Primary Residential Mortgage, Realty 411 Magazine, Real Wealth Network, REIExpo.com, Rick and Leanne Rossiter, Southwest Riverside County Association of Realtors, Sonoka Corporation, Spinnaker Loans, UDirect IRA, Tony Alvarez, The Bottom Feeders, Tri-Emerald Financial Group, and Westin South Coast Plaza. See isurvivedrealestate.com for video of the live event and more on our sponsors.
All right, our next two panelists are going to come up. I'll first introduce Leslie Appleton-Young. That was a good idea, by the way. That's a good. Leslie is the Vice President and Chief Economist of the California Association of Realtors, a statewide trade organization with over 195,000 members. No?
164.
164. 31,000 of them bit the dust. But they're coming back.
Do you want me here?
Yeah, that's fine. No one wants me to read their bio. She's actually one of my favorite interviews. And my all-time favorite, I think I'll save this phone call. When I first interviewed her on the radio, she didn't know me from Adam, and she was sick. And she said, "How long is this?" And I said, 2 25-minute segments. And you could just hear on the other end of the phone going, "Oh, no." Because she speaks a lot, you can get pretty tired doing that. Well, they went well. The interviews went really well. She said, actually, that was really the best interviews I've ever had. And within an hour, we gave her a gift basket full of medicine stuff and all that.
It was full of Campbell's soup. It was adorable. But the other backstory to us is I heard that someone was grumbling about our housing affordability index and the methodology changed. And this person that was grumbling very loudly in the Inland Empire was named Bruce Norris. And I called him up, and it was love at first sight.
We've had a good relationship. But she called and left a message saying it wasn't necessary to do the gift basket, with tears in her voice. And it's really my all-time favorite recording, so I've kept it forever. Sean O'Toole is the creator of Foreclosure Radar and now Property Radar. Sean was a successful trustee sale buyer, having bought over 150 properties. He's become a friend of mine. And we actually disagree on some pretty major things once in a while. But the one thing that we really have developed is a trust in each other's intent and process. And so one of my favorite things is, okay, we both do each the honor of setting aside what we thought we knew completely to listen to the other side of the table as best we can. And that's hard to do because, we both study really hard for our conclusions, and the tendency would be as soon as he says something, I go, well, no, but what about this? But if you can give up winning for just a minute, you actually can go, okay, you have a point. And so we each add a piece of the puzzle when we come up to better conclusions. And so I'm probably going to have to go through some of that tonight in front of you guys. So welcome to both of you. And Leslie, we'll start with you. Just delivered your sort of state of the real estate for 2014. So what do you expect? Well, I'm going to go down a list of some things. Volume of sales.
Volume of sales will be up 3 to 4% next year.
Okay. Are we starting this year with less inventory?
No.
With more?
We've had a uptick in inventory for the last 3 months or so.
Year over year, though, are we starting this year with less in 2000 and?
Yes, but the gap is closing.
Gap's closing?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we now? We're 3.1?
It was 3.1. It's now 3.6. 3.7 was the data that came out for September. And that's a ratio of listings to sales.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's because you think did sales go down? They kind of might have.
Yeah, and a little bit, but you had one of those slides that showed the really sharp reduction in underwater mortgages in California, and that's one of the things that's feeding into inventory a little bit. You also have a little bit more, investors were, renting out properties, 82, in one of the surveys that we do, 82% of the investors were renting out instead of flipping. Mm-hmm. And that's starting to change. You're seeing a little bit more emphasis on the flipping, now. So those two things are helping to get inventory going. You also have sellers that were on the sidelines kind of watching the market. And, when rates started to go up in May, I think the whole tenor of the market started to change a little bit. And even though rates are still remarkably low, they're not as low as they were. And that got some of the sellers on the sidelines getting into the market. But the market's overshooting itself, so we're seeing more discounts from list price because everyone is overly optimistic typically when they list their home. So we really are, I think, at a bit of a tipping point in terms of market dynamics.
Okay. The mix of sales has really radically changed year over year. So now we're really getting back to what would be a normal percent of equity sales, let's say in years that were not really affected by REOs.
90, 95%.
Yeah.
And we're almost there. I think we're at over 87% retail or traditional sales. And it's really messed up the median home price because our median home price has been up 1 month this year. It was up 30% of it on a year-over-year basis. And it really was just 2/3 of that was really a change in the mix of what was selling. So that's why we're seeing...
We don't want to hear that.
I'm sorry, but that's why that's why this year the California median home price is up, I don't know, I can't remember any numbers right now, but 27%, something like that, and our forecast for next year is 6% because all of that mix adjustment has pretty much played itself out.
So you're really looking at actually your price projection for median price for 2014 was 440?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something around there. So 6% increase over this year.
And what are we 440 now? I just have to mess with you a little bit.
Selma, help me.
I think we were at 440.
We're close.
But what's interesting is median is really one of the longest pricing structures. And it's consistently inaccurate, but at least it's consistent. I'm going to take that hit and say that I am an agnostic when it comes to data. I just want to know what it is. And I agree. The median home price the last couple of years has been ridiculous.
average home prices have been even worse. Doing a quartile analysis makes a lot more sense. The Case-Shiller index, which really isn't buffeted by changes in the mix of what's selling, is great. I mean, that's one of the big differences in the 30 years I've been at CAR. You know, we used to, way back when, be the only game in town for California data, and now you've got, you know, Trulia and Zillow and FHFA, and everybody's out there with their numbers. And I think the good thing is eventually everybody tells the same story, right? So in 2012, you know, everyone could breathe a sigh of relief because the national housing market and national housing prices were all telling the same story, right? Everybody was up. But in California, that happened 3 years earlier because of people like you that sold in 05 and bought like crazy in 07, right?
Well, a little later than that.
08? Okay, well, yeah.
Okay. Sean, you have done really a fabulous job of making buying foreclosures easier for the masses. Thank you very much. No, it really has changed the dynamics. If you've ever tried to get a list of properties years ago, it was thousands of dollars. And I always think it's funny when you talk to people that are really young and they look at his website and you, $50 or whatever it is, just they can't, why would you pay that? You have no idea what you're talking about, my goodness. So what do the numbers look like to you, let's say a year ago to now, as far as REO count? There's still this suspicion. We really want there to be shadow inventory that's going to creep up and bite us, but do you see that?
I mean, both new foreclosure starts and foreclosure sales, both down about 60% year over year.
Okay.
You know, it's still, people come to me and say, you know, you switch from foreclosure radar to property radar because the foreclosures are gone. You know, our customers bought $500 million worth of property last month at the courthouse steps. So, you know, there's still a little business there.
Yeah.
For sure. And in fact, with Property Radar, we improved our foreclosure features. So I think foreclosures are going to be with us for a while. We still have a lot of folks underwater. But clearly, foreclosures are way down. I mean, look, we've had the federal government, the state government, just about everybody say that foreclosures are the problem, and they set out to stop foreclosures, and they've been relatively successful. Now, whether or not foreclosures are the problem, I think is a whole different question. I think it's negative equity. There, we're only down about 50% in California from when this all started.
We're down, what now, the numbers of people
that
have a negative?
The number of folks underwater in their home has only dropped about 50%.
5-0.
5-0.
Okay.
Think about how far into this we are.
Yeah, it's a long ways.
For those folks that are still underwater, I don't think this feels like much of a recovery.
No, and there's areas that were over double, you know,
yeah.
or half the value of their property was half of their loan amount, so that has taken longer for those people. Are enough of them delinquent that we could have any issue with lots of inventory showing up, you know, and assisting the 3.7 months to getting to 6 months?
Yeah, roughly a third of them right now are delinquent or in foreclosure, one of the two. And
they're delinquent a fair percentage of day. I mean, it's a long time. They're not going to make that loan current, apparently.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's no question we've made huge improvements on principal balance loan modifications, short sales. But, you know, just again today, the servicers kind of reaffirmed that they've met all the national servicing requirements. You know, 2012 was kind of the year of the short sale, and part of that was because there were huge incentives to the banks to push short sales through. Mm-hmm. That ended at the end of the year. Now, short sales are still a pretty important part of the market right now. Still, you know, short sales and REOs are 25% of home sales. Right?
In California?
So, yeah, when people say they're gone, that's still a pretty substantial percentage of the market.
Okay, if we have 87% equity sellers, how do we get to 25? I'm not being argumentative.
I disagree with that number.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Well, we look at the MLS data of properties that closed in a given month. So the data that just came out was like 87% traditional equity, about 3.5% REO, and about 10% short sales. So I don't know if those numbers are right or wrong in the global context, but certainly in the context of MLS data, I feel pretty confident about them.
We are measuring apples and oranges too. I'm
Okay.
looking at public records data.
Right.
And so we, of course, know which houses the banks have foreclosed on, so we track that, which ones they've resold. And then we also, we estimate how much debt folks have, and if they sell at a price below that debt, we call that a short sale, whether or not the person came out of their pocket. It was still a distressed sale. They maybe came up with money out of their pocket instead of the lender taking the hit. And then you have the issues of, MLS data is great, but you don't always have people list that it's a short sale or an REO. So we're going to pick that up even though it may not. And we're going to pick up all the pocket listings and the bulk sales and all of these other things that never hit the MLS.
While we were driving over, you shared with me that you have, your own feeling about what the median price movement was. But then you, since you have access to a new toy, you said, okay, something about the distressed inventory moved differently than non-distressed inventory. So share with us what was going on there.
So by our data, we have a median price increase from last year of about 25%. And we put it at 400,000 right now, so a little lower.
Okay.
And what's interesting about that, though, is we broke that into two groups, distressed and non-distressed, right? And distressed sales are up about 16%. The median price of all distressed sales was up about 16%, right? So you think, wow, the median price of non-distressed had to go up quite a lot to make up for that. But that's only up 10%. The rest is a shift.
You're making my head hurt,
from mostly from a lot more distressed, right, to a lot more non-distressed. So when you take the median price, it moved up, even though prices in those two groups moved up considerably less. Right. The mix moved it up more. So, did home values go up 25%? I don't think so.
No. But there's a much stronger demand for distressed properties than there is for the traditional equity sales. And the inventory is lower and the price appreciation is still higher, absolutely.
What's going to happen to first-time buyers, you think, in 2014? And why aren't they a participant to the extent, percentage-wise, that they normally would be at this stage?
They want to participate, but they can't. They don't have a job. They don't have a down payment. They have student loan debt. They can't compete with all-cash buyers. FHA is no longer a competitive program for many of them.
Why?
Because the fees are up, and loan limits may be coming down. I mean, there's a lot of things on the horizon that are going to impact them negatively. So that's one of the really problems with something like the Housing Affordability Index, because it gives you a number, but it doesn't give you the context of the market, right? And how tight, I know you put up the FICO scores, right? And I think Chris mentioned, just from 750 to 710, you get rid of 15% of the market. Well, it's really a shame, because there's a lot of, young potential home buyers that at 715 are a really great risk, right? But they can't get loans and they can't compete in this marketplace. So one of the positive things a little bit about rates coming up is that refi activity has gone down, and lenders have been, I've at least heard this anecdotally, a little bit more interested in making loans with, a little bit.
From your membership, I'm sure you get lots of feedback. Do they find that there's a lot of overlays that on top of what they think is available for loan products, that the lenders have things that are more restrictive than what they think is going to be out there, and then they can't get loans that they thought they could?
I'm not sure how to answer that, except it's just very challenging, when you're working with someone that needs a loan. And that's why the we do a survey every year where we ask realtors about their last closed transaction, and we've been doing it for 35 years. And last year we had the highest percentage of all cash. It was 30%. We had 17% of the realtors saying, I was working with an investor. So that's, if you have a buyer I've heard of, there's 50 offers on one property, and if there's any kind of contingency, a loan contingency, an appraisal contingency, whatever kind of contingency, they're not even looking at them.
Right.
Now, the market's changed a little bit, so instead of 50, maybe there's only 10 offers, or maybe 4 offers. So it's all a question of degree. But just to circle back, I think this whole issue of first-time buyers is absolutely critical. And at my organization, we really are gearing back up for a huge housing affordability problem and a need to reach out to first-time home buyers and help them get in the ballpark, you know, because they just can't compete in this market. It's really tough.
Now, when you say you're gearing up for a foreclosure, for a affordability problem?
Well, yeah. So we're going to put on 6 regional homebuyer fairs next year, just reaching out to potential first-time home buyers to talk to them about. I mean, I think with respect to that group, you have to speak to them early and often before, because they can find homes on their own. It's like, how do they save money? How do they get their debt in order? You know, Freddie Mac has this wonderful program called Credit Smart that's on their website that really helps people kind of understand the responsibilities of home ownership and how to get in. And I think just as an organization, we're getting much more focused on that because it's the big issue, or one of the big issues going forward. And whatever happens in Washington with respect to the mortgage interest deduction and the GSEs and so on and so forth, I think we can probably all agree that it's not going to get easier. Just not.
Okay. Sean, you and I, when I was doing the last report, you provided data for hedge fund participation.
Yeah.
Why don't we share a little bit about, what they've bought during, let's say, those years that they were dominant, and are they slowing down or being the same or changing locations? What's your feeling on that?
So the way we measure it is purchases by LLCs, LPs.
Okay.
And that peaked in October 2012 at about 10% of sales.
Okay.
And it's now down 55% last month to just under, or right around 5% of sales.
Now, when you say that could have been some people in this room, right?
Well, yeah, the LLC LP is a little bit broader. We definitely have plenty of small, professional investors that buy in those kinds of entities. So it does include them as well.
Okay.
But it seems we've gone through and handpicked some of them out from some of the names that we know, but overall, it's tens of thousands of records. So that's been the fastest way to kind of measure it, keep track. Some of these folks are creating new entities every month, so tying them back to the parent entity gets a little tough, and they use strange names.
Okay. Do you consider that they've been a market maker forcing prices upward, and do you consider them dangerous if they exit?
I think absolutely. I think they realized early on that home prices were well below where they should have been, that ROIs were higher than really they should have been, and saw the buying opportunity and came in a big way and took advantage of that. And I think it's pretty clear that the reason they've left the building or leaving the building is because prices have risen to a point where those ROIs are no longer attractive. So I think that makes all perfect sense.
Are they keeping that inventory, or are they all making sort of scattered decisions?
Yeah, so on the exit side, I mean, you certainly have some that have decided to exit. The Colony folks have said they're exiting, but they're primarily looking for another bulk purchaser to kind of take that portfolio on rather than to say, hey, we're going to drop these single-family homes out there. Back in, I think it was 2004, there was a gentleman that bought like 300 homes. I don't remember the story exactly, in the Sacramento area. And he decided in 2004 that he'd seen enough appreciation and wanted out. And he went to evict all 300 tenants at the same time. And the government jumped in and actually said, no, you can't do that. He's like, well, why can't I? And so they ended up negotiating with him that he would sell them slowly over a period of time. I don't think any of the hedge funds, even if they decide this isn't a business they want to be in anymore, is going to just suddenly put all of their inventory, on the MLS. I think that the possibility of that is zero.
Have they been market makers in rent values?
I think that like to be, but you know, I don't have any data there, so I can't really say for sure.
Okay.
I'm sure that I have some anecdotal stories from some principals that have said that they had hoped to see more rent appreciation than they'd seen, and that renting the homes is tougher,
Okay.
you know, than they hoped. I think that's obvious to anybody in here who's owned a rental.
Leslie, just one last question. Loan limits declining. It's, you know, it's not so much the amount, but it seems like the intent. So if they lower loan amounts 5%, that's going to not be as big an effect, but that's not the intent to stop there, is it? As far as if that's going to be the trend, then those loan limits on FHA or Fannie Mae are really going to start changing in the future.
I think Chris really spoke to this really well. It's just there's so much policy uncertainty right now. You know, there's a couple bills that were introduced, Senate, House, on the GSEs. They don't mesh. There's a new proposal out. I don't think anybody has any idea, but it makes it very difficult to kind of make long-term decisions about anything at all. But anything that reduces the loan limits in the current environment where we've got, 85% of the loans being purchased by the GSEs is going to be a problem for California. Now, we're still, you know, our statewide median's at 440, and there were a couple of months at the peak of the market where the median was 625. In many areas, we're still 20-30% below that prior peak. That's not the case in the Bay Area,
no.
As an example, and in Silicon Valley. I mean, we're right up and kind of surpassing some of those areas. So, yeah, the loan limits are a huge issue.
Okay.
This event could not have been possible without the generous help of the following platinum partners: PropertyRadar and Sean O'Toole, HousingWire, the Apartment Owners Association, the San Diego Creative Real Estate Investors Association and President Bill Tan, Investors Workshops and Sean Watkins, Angel Bronzegeest and Sarah Benora, investCLUB for Women and Iris Veneration and Bobby Alexander, San Jose Real Estate Investors Association and Geraldine Barry, MVT Productions, RODA Construction, Wilson Investment Properties, and White House Catering. For event video and information, visit isurvivedrealestate.com. The Norris Group would like to thank its gold sponsors for supporting I Survived Real Estate: Adrenaline Athletics, Claudia Buys Houses, Coldwell Banker Town & Country, Elite Auctions, Phoebe, for investors by investors, Home Vestors, In a Day Development, Inland Empire Investors Forum, Inland Valley Association of Realtors, Investor Experts, Inc., John Merrill Investments, Inc., Keystone CPA, Las Brisas Escrow, Lavis Associates, Northern California Real Estate Investors Association, Northern San Diego Real Estate Investors Association, Orange County Real Estate Investors Association, Orange County Investment Club Phoebe, Personal Real Estate Magazine, Pilot Limo, Primary Residential Mortgage, Realty 411 Magazine, Real Wealth Network, REIExpo.com, Rick and Leanne Rossiter, Southwest Riverside County Association of Realtors, Sonoka Corporation, Spinnaker Loans, UDirect IRA, Tony Alvarez, The Bottom Feeders, Tri-Emerald Financial Group, and Westin South Coast Plaza. See isurvivedrealestate.com for video of the live event and more on our sponsors.